Welcome to John Carter Stories. I wasn't supposed to be home that morning. That's the only reason I'm still breathing today. I'd driven halfway to the office when I realized my wallet wasn't in my pocket. I remember feeling annoyed more than anything else, frustrated with myself. Just another careless, rushed morning in a life that had become routine. I turned the car around, pulled into our driveway, and walked inside quietly, keys in hand. The house felt normal, safe, familiar. The same walls we'd painted together 3 years ago. The same furniture we'd chosen on lazy Saturday afternoons. Until I heard her voice, soft and intimate, floating from our bedroom down the hallway. "We'll increase the dose tonight," Jessica whispered. I froze completely in the hallway, every muscle in my body locked. A man's voice answered her, low and comfortable. He hasn't noticed anything yet. My chest tightened like someone had wrapped steel bands around my ribs. Jessica gave a quiet laugh, the same one she used when she curled against me on cold winter nights, when she traced patterns on my chest in the darkness. "No," she said, and I heard the smile in her voice. "Michael trusts me completely." My name sounded so wrong coming from her mouth in that moment. Wrong and final and disposable. I didn't move, didn't breathe, couldn't. The hallway suddenly felt like thin ice beneath my feet, ready to crack and swallow me whole. "Soon," she continued softly, almost dreamily, "everything will be ours." Ours. Not mine, not his. Ours. That single word detonated in my mind like a bomb. My fingers slowly loosened their grip on the doorframe. Years of marriage, of shared meals and whispered promises and plans for the future, all of it collapsed into that single poisonous word. I stepped backward silently, carefully, and left the house without letting them hear me exist. Outside, I sat in my car in our driveway and stared at my hands resting on the steering wheel. They weren't shaking. That scared me more than anything else. The stillness, the calm, the complete absence of panic. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, loud in the silent car. "Jessica, hey babe." Red heart emoji. "Did you make it to work safe?" I stared at the message on my screen and realized something that made my stomach turn. My wife had just lied to me while standing 10 feet away from where I'd been moments before. She was checking, monitoring, tracking. Please subscribe and like this video and listen to my story till the end, and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. I didn't confront her. Not then. Not because I was afraid, but because I needed her to feel safe. People make mistakes when they feel safe. They get careless, confident. They expose themselves. I waited exactly 12 minutes, sitting in my car, breathing slowly, thinking clearly. Then I walked back inside, this time letting the front door close normally. My keys hit the ceramic bowl on the console table with a usual metallic clink that always announced my arrival. "Jess!" I called out casually, like nothing had changed, like my entire world hadn't just shattered. Footsteps, quick but controlled. Then the bedroom door opened smoothly. She stepped into the hallway, adjusting her hair with one hand, her face already wearing the version of herself she wanted me to see. Warm, familiar, loyal, loving. "Hey!" She smiled brightly. "You forgot something." Her eyes flicked down to my hands immediately, checking, measuring, calculating what I knew. "My wallet," I said, lifting it slightly so she could see. She laughed softly, that musical laugh I'd fallen in love with 6 years ago. "You'd forget your own head if I wasn't around to remind you." She stepped closer and kissed my cheek. Her lips were warm against my skin. "Practiced. Perfect. Rehearsed. I thought you had your yoga class this morning," I said, keeping my voice light, curious but not suspicious. "It ended early," she replied smoothly, instantly. No hesitation. Not even half a second of delay. The instructor wasn't feeling well. She walked past me into the kitchen, completely at ease, moving through our shared space like nothing had happened. Too at ease. Too comfortable. She grabbed 2 coffee mugs from the cabinet, the blue ones we'd bought on our honeymoon. Her movements were calm, routine, practiced. Then she asked without turning to look at me, her voice casual, "How are you feeling today?" Not "How was your drive?" Not "Why did you come back?" Not "What made you turn around?" "How are you feeling?" My chest tightened again because suddenly that innocent question didn't sound like concern anymore. It sounded like data collection, like a scientist checking on an experiment, like someone monitoring progress. That night, I pretended to fall asleep before her, something I rarely did. Jessica stayed awake beside me in bed, scrolling on her phone, the screen's blue light reflecting in her eyes. Every few seconds, she glanced over at me, watching closely, waiting for something. I slowed my breathing deliberately, made it heavy and deep and predictable and believable, the breathing of someone in deep sleep. After 10 long minutes, she reached over carefully and gently touched my shoulder. Testing. Checking. I didn't move, didn't react, stayed perfectly still. Another minute passed in silence. Then she quietly slipped out of bed, her movement slow and precise. The bedroom door opened with careful precision, then clicked shut just as carefully, like she was afraid of waking me. I waited 5 seconds, counting them in my head. Then I followed. The hallway was dark, but her voice carried clearly from the kitchen in a low, intimate whisper. "Yes," she said quietly. "He's asleep now." My stomach tightened into a painful knot. "No," she continued softly, reassuringly. "He hasn't noticed anything at all." A pause. She was listening to someone on the other end. Then she added, quieter this time, almost conspiratorial. "I increased it last week, just like you told me to." Increased it. Increase what? My hand pressed hard against the wall to steady myself, to keep from falling. The man's voice answered through a phone speaker. I couldn't hear his words clearly, but I heard her response perfectly. "I know," she whispered. "But once it's done, everything transfers to me anyway. The house, the accounts, all of it. Transfers, not shares, not split. Transfers, complete ownership, finality, the end of me." Morning came like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't fundamentally shifted overnight. Jessica stood at the kitchen counter, morning sunlight falling across her shoulders through the window, illuminating her like she was something holy. She stirred a cup of coffee slowly, peacefully. She looked ordinary, beautiful, dangerous. I stepped backward silently, carefully, before the old floorboards could betray my presence. Back into the bedroom. Back into the bed she shared with me while planning my death. Minutes later, she returned and lay beside me again like nothing had happened. Her hand rested gently on my chest, right over my heart, feeling my heartbeat, tracking it, counting it, waiting for it to slow, to weaken, to stop. And in that moment, lying in the darkness beside the woman I promised to love forever, I realized something that turned my blood to ice water in my veins. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was actively preparing to replace me. Engagement break. Have you ever discovered something about someone you trusted that completely changed everything? That moment when you realized the person you knew was actually a stranger? Leave a comment below. Morning came like nothing had happened, like the world hadn't fundamentally shifted overnight. Jessica stood at the kitchen counter, morning sunlight falling across her shoulders through the window, illuminating her like she was something holy. She stirred a cup of coffee slowly, peacefully. She looked ordinary, beautiful, dangerous. "Morning," she said softly when she saw me enter. Her smile was effortless, genuine-looking, practice of perfection. I forced one back, matching her energy. "Morning." She turned gracefully and held out a mug toward me. "I made yours already, just how you like it." I took it slowly, carefully. The ceramic was warm in my hands, familiar. The same navy blue mug I'd used every single morning for years. I watched her face carefully now, studying every micro-expression. No fear, no hesitation, no guilt, only patience. She was waiting. I raised the mug halfway to my lips, then paused deliberately. "Did you already have yours?" I asked casually. She nodded easily and lifted her own cup to show me. Already halfway through it. But I noticed something crucial. Her coffee was lighter, diluted with more cream. Mine was darker, richer, untouched by her hands until she'd handed it to me. She was watching my hands now. Not openly, not obviously, but closely, intently, measuring every movement. I brought the mug to my lips and let it hover there for a long second. Then I lowered it slowly. "Still too hot," I said. "Burned my tongue yesterday." She smiled gently, understandingly. Give it a minute to cool down. No rush. Her voice was calm, controlled, confident, like she knew time was entirely on her side, like she had all the time in the world because I didn't. I set the mug on the counter and walked toward the sink, pretending to rinse something from my hands. Behind me, I heard her shoulders shift, her posture relax slightly. Relief. Satisfaction. That's when I understood the full, horrible truth completely. She didn't need to rush anything because in her mind, in her carefully constructed plan, I was already dying on schedule. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Our end of part 1. Rehook. I stopped drinking anything she gave me after that, and what I discovered next proved I was right to be afraid. I stopped drinking anything Jessica gave me after that morning. Not abruptly, because that would have raised immediate suspicion and ruined everything. Carefully, strategically, with the precision of someone who knew they were fighting for their life. I'd bring the mug to my lips, tilt it slightly, let her see the motion from across the room. Then I'd leave it behind when she wasn't looking, when she turned to check her phone or load the dishwasher. Pour it down the sink quietly, into the soil of the plant on the back porch, into the half-dead ficus in the living room, anywhere but inside my body. Jessica never questioned it because she didn't think she needed to. In her mind, I was already weakening, already fading, already becoming less of an obstacle with each passing day. 3 days later, I went to a private medical clinic across town during my lunch break. Not our regular doctor, not anyone who knew us. I paid cash, left no insurance trail, offered no detailed explanations. The nurse drew my blood with practiced efficiency, asked routine questions. I gave routine answers, bland and unremarkable. 2 hours later, she returned to the small examination room with a paper in her hand and a completely different expression on her face. Concerned, confused, alarmed. "Mr. Harrison," she said carefully, choosing her words, "are you currently prescribed any sedatives or sleep medications?" "No," I said. "Nothing like that." "Why?" She hesitated for just a moment, then showed me the results, pointing to specific lines with her pen. Elevated benzodiazepine levels. Consistent exposure over time. Repeated dosing pattern. The medical terms blurred together after that, swirling in my head. This wasn't suspicion anymore. This wasn't theory or paranoia or imagination. This was proof. Clinical, documented, undeniable proof. I walked back to my car in the clinic parking lot and sat there staring at the steering wheel, at my hands, at nothing. My phone buzzed loudly in the silent car. "Jessica, did you drink your coffee this morning?" Red heart emoji. Not "how's your day going?" Not "I love you." Not "thinking of you." Just that. Just checking. Just monitoring her progress. I stared at the message for a long time, reading it over and over. She wasn't worried about me, about my health, about my well-being. She was tracking her experiment, measuring her results, calculating her timeline. And for the first time since I'd met her 7 years ago, I realized something that made me feel physically sick. She actually believed she was winning. She thought she was ahead. She thought I had no idea. I hired a lawyer that same afternoon. Not just any lawyer. Someone Jessica knew personally. Someone she trusted completely. Nathan Pierce had been our attorney for 5 years. He'd handled our home purchase, drafted our wills, managed our joint accounts and investments. He'd sat across from us at dinner parties, laughing at Jessica's stories, complimenting her cooking. He never expected to hear what I told him when I walked into his office. "She's been drugging me," I said quietly, placing the toxicology report on his polished desk between us. He didn't interrupt, didn't react immediately with shock or disbelief. He read every single line of the report first, slowly and carefully. Then he looked up at me with completely serious eyes. "Do not confront her," he said calmly, firmly. "Not yet." That word mattered immensely. Yet. It meant there would be a time. It meant there was a plan. He explained everything carefully over the next hour. Evidence, documentation, timeline, legal protection. If I confronted her now, immediately, she'd deny everything. She'd cry. She'd act shocked and hurt and betrayed. She'd make me look paranoid, unstable, dangerous. But if I waited, if I was patient, if I was smarter than her, she'd expose herself completely. She'd make mistakes. She'd get confident. She'd reveal everything. That night, I came home and played my role perfectly. I moved slower, paused longer when speaking, forgot small things intentionally, little details that would make her believe her plan was working exactly as intended. Jessica noticed everything. I saw it clearly in her eyes. Relief washing over her face. Confirmation. Satisfaction. At dinner, she watched me struggle slightly with my fork, my hand trembling just barely as I cut my chicken. "You okay?" she asked softly, leaning forward. Concern carefully painted on her face, but interest shining in her eyes. I nodded weakly, tiredly, just exhausted. Work's been intense lately. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand gently, comforting, reassuring, loving, cruel, because in her mind, in her twisted internal narrative, everything was working perfectly. She was already living in the future she wanted, the future where I wasn't there anymore, where everything was hers, where she was free. She smiled at me gently, sweetly, and I smiled back, matching her energy perfectly, because she had absolutely no idea what was coming. She had no idea I had already started systematically removing her from everything. Engagement break. Would you have confronted her immediately, or would you have waited and gathered evidence like I did? What would you have done differently? Nathan worked incredibly fast. Within 48 hours, everything was already in motion, moving like a machine. My individual bank accounts were secured and separated. My life insurance beneficiary was officially changed through proper legal channels. My will was completely rewritten with witnesses and notarization. Every single asset she thought she'd inherit, every dollar she'd been counting on, was already out of her reach. Legally, quietly, irreversibly. At home, Jessica continued her routine without any awareness. Coffee every single morning, prepared with care. Her soft voice asking how I felt. Her careful watching when she thought I wasn't looking. Her infinite patience. She thought she was so far ahead of me. She thought she'd already won. One night, she handed me my usual mug and stood there longer than normal, watching me more intently. "You seemed weaker lately," she said gently, almost sympathetically. "More tired than usual." I nodded slowly, playing my part. "Just exhausted, I guess. Can't seem to shake it." She stepped closer, resting her hand flat on my chest, right over my heart, feeling my heartbeat, counting the rhythm, waiting for it to change, waiting for it to slow. "I'm here for you," she whispered softly. "Whatever you need." The words would have sounded comforting to anyone else. Loving, supportive, but they weren't for me. They were for her. Reassurance that her plan was still on track, that everything was proceeding according to schedule. Later that night, she fell asleep beside me, her breathing deep and peaceful and certain. She had no doubts, no fears, no suspicions. I waited until exactly 2:14 in the morning. Then I carefully, slowly, took her phone from the nightstand where she always left it charging. Her fingerprint unlocked it instantly when I pressed her thumb against the sensor. She never imagined she needed to hide anything from a dying man. Why would she? Her text messages were exactly where I expected them to be. One number, no name assigned, no contact information, just digits. I opened the conversation thread and scrolled through weeks of messages. And the last message she'd sent, just hours earlier, made everything inside me go completely cold. It's getting noticeably worse now. Weaker every day. Soon everything will be mine. Not ours, not shared, mine. Singular, possessive, final. And that's when I knew with absolute certainty it was time to end this nightmare. I'll end of part 2, rehook. I didn't confront her immediately. I gave her one more morning, one final chance to reveal exactly who she'd become. I didn't confront Jessica immediately the next morning. I gave her one more day, one final morning, one last opportunity to be the person I'd married, though I knew that person probably never existed. Jessica stood in the kitchen as the sun rose, humming softly to herself, golden morning light warming her face and making her look almost angelic. She stirred my coffee slowly, carefully. She looked peaceful, content, certain about the future, like the ending had already been written, and she'd already read the final page. She turned gracefully and handed me the mug with both hands, like it was something precious. "Here you go," she said gently, warmly. "Made it just the way you like it." I took it from her hands, held it carefully, felt the warmth seeping into my palms. Then I set it down on the counter between us, untouched. "I need to show you something," I said calmly, quietly, without any anger in my voice. She froze. Not visibly, not dramatically, but I saw it happen in her eyes. A flash of something. Fear, recognition, calculation. I reached into my jacket pocket and placed a toxicology report on the kitchen counter between us, right next to the coffee mug she'd just handed me. She looked down at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. Her lips parted slightly. No words came out. Nothing. Just silence and the sound of her breathing changing. "I know," I said quietly, steadily. "I know everything." The room went completely silent. Even the refrigerator seemed to stop humming. The only sound was a clock on the wall ticking, counting seconds. Her entire body changed in that moment. Not panic, not yet, but I watched her mind working, calculating rapidly, searching desperately for a way out, for an explanation, for a story that would make this okay. But there wasn't one. There was no explanation that would work. No lie big enough to cover this truth. "I've already spoken to an attorney," I continued calmly, my voice level and controlled. "Everything is documented now. The blood tests, the timeline, the text messages." Still silence. Still that damning paper sitting between us on the counter. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She was staring at a report, at the numbers, at the medical terminology that proved what she'd been doing to me for weeks, maybe months. She was looking at the end of everything. Because in that moment, standing in our kitchen with morning sunlight streaming through the windows, she understood something she never expected, something she never planned for. She hadn't been watching me die slowly and peacefully like she'd planned. I had been watching her expose herself completely. I picked up my car keys from the counter where I'd set them and walked toward the front door, my footsteps steady and purposeful. She didn't follow me, didn't speak, didn't move at all. Because for the first time since I'd known her, since we'd met at that coffee shop 7 years ago, since she'd smiled at me and made me believe in love again, she wasn't in control anymore. And she knew it. Engagement break. Can you imagine standing in that kitchen in that moment? The person you loved, the person you trusted with everything, exposed completely? What would you have said? I walked out of that house and didn't look back. Not once. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove to Nathan's office across town. "It's done," I said when I walked through his door. "She knows I know." He nodded seriously. "Good. Now the real work begins." Over the next 72 hours, everything moved faster than I could have imagined. Nathan was meticulous, thorough, relentless. He filed for immediate legal separation, citing safety concerns and emotional abuse. He submitted the toxicology report to the police along with a formal statement. He provided the text message screenshots I'd taken from her phone. He documented every single morning coffee, every suspicious conversation, every moment I pretended to be weaker while she watched with satisfaction. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, damning. 2 detectives came to interview me at Nathan's office. They were professional, thorough, serious. They asked detailed questions. I answered every single one honestly, showed them everything, held nothing back. "Mr. Harrison," one of them said carefully when we finished, "you understand this is attempted murder, correct? This isn't just marital problems or a bad relationship. This is criminal." I nodded slowly. "I understand completely." She could face serious prison time if convicted. "I understand that, too." They exchanged glances. Then the older detective spoke again. "You did the right thing by not confronting her violently, by not taking matters into your own hands. You followed the law. You gathered evidence. You protected yourself legally." I nodded again, but I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel anything except hollow and exhausted and heartbroken. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd planned a future with, had been slowly poisoning me, and I'd slept beside her every night while she did it. 3 days later, 2 police officers knocked on our door. Our door. The house we'd bought together. The home we'd built. I was already gone by then, staying at a hotel downtown, but Nathan called me immediately when it happened. "They arrested her," he said simply, "about an hour ago." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed and stared at the wall. I should have felt relief, vindication, safety. Instead, I just felt sad. Overwhelmingly, crushingly sad. Michael. Nathan's voice came through the phone. You still there? Yeah, I said quietly. I'm here. You did the right thing, he said firmly. You saved your own life. I knew he was right. Intellectually, I knew he was absolutely right. But emotionally, I just lost everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, my future. I'll end of part 3. Re-hook. Then I got a phone call I never expected, and what she said made me question everything I thought I knew. The phone call came 6 days after Jessica's arrest. I was sitting in my temporary hotel room, staring at nothing, trying to process everything that had happened, when my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer it, but something made me pick up. Michael. Her voice. Jessica's voice. Quiet. Broken. Nothing like the confident woman who'd been poisoning my coffee. I should have hung up immediately. Nathan had told me explicitly not to communicate with her, but I needed to hear it. I needed to understand why. Why are you calling me? I asked, my voice flat. They're letting me make calls, she said. There was something different in her tone, something I couldn't quite identify. I only get a few minutes. Silence stretched between us. Why, Jessica? The question came out raw, painful. Just tell me why. I deserve to know that much. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then she spoke, and her voice was shaking. David, she said. His name is David. The man, the voice I'd heard in our bedroom that morning. We met 2 years ago, she continued, words coming faster now, like she'd been holding them inside for too long. At first it was just talking. Then it became more, and he made me believe we could have a life together, a real life, if you just weren't in the way anymore. My stomach turned. 2 years. She'd been planning this for 2 years. He told me it would be easy, she continued, her voice cracking. That no one would ever know. That we'd be together and have everything. The house, the money, the life we wanted. He made it sound so simple. Simple. I repeated, the word tasting like poison. Murdering me sounded simple. I know how it sounds, she said, and I heard her crying now. Actually crying. I know what I've done. I know there's no excuse. But I need you to understand. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't myself. That's not an explanation, I said coldly. That's not a reason. You chose this. Every single morning, you chose this. I know, she whispered. Oh, God, I know. More silence. I could hear other voices in the background on her end. Someone telling her time was almost up. I'm sorry, she said desperately. Michael, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was so completely wrong. I don't expect you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve that. But I needed you to hear me say it. I'm sorry. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to believe her. Part of me wanted to think the woman I'd loved was still in there somewhere, buried under the person who'd tried to kill me. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. You're not sorry for what you did, I said quietly. You're sorry you got caught. No, she said quickly. That's not. Goodbye, Jessica. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I sat there in that sterile hotel room and finally let myself cry. Not for her, for everything I'd lost, for the life I'd thought I had, for the future that had been stolen from me. Engagement break. Could you forgive someone who did this to you? Could you even listen to their apology? Or would you hang up like I did? The legal process moved forward relentlessly. Nathan kept me informed of every development, every hearing, every piece of new evidence that surfaced. The police found everything. Her text messages with David went back 23 months. They'd been planning this almost from the beginning of their affair. He'd researched drugs, dosages, timelines. She'd implemented the plan, slowly increasing the amounts, carefully monitoring my decline. David was arrested 4 days after Jessica. He tried to claim he didn't know what she was doing, that he'd never suggested anything criminal, that the messages were taken out of context. But the evidence didn't lie. The texts were explicit. The plan was detailed. They'd both known exactly what they were doing. 2 weeks after the arrest, I finally went back to our house. My house now, technically. Nathan had secured it legally. But walking through that front door felt like stepping into a crime scene. Everything looked the same. The furniture we'd picked out together. The pictures on the walls. The blue coffee mug still in the cabinet. But it all felt contaminated somehow. Poisoned by what had happened here. I stood in the kitchen where she'd handed me that last cup of coffee, where I'd placed the toxicology report on the counter, where everything had finally come to light. My phone buzzed. Nathan. The prosecutor's office called. He said, "They want to know if you'll testify at trial." "Yes," I said immediately. "Absolutely yes." "It won't be easy," he warned. "You'll have to sit in that courtroom and face her. You'll have to relive all of it in detail." "I know," I said, "but I need to do this. I need to stand up there and tell the truth about what she did." "Okay," Nathan said. "I'll let them know." After we hung up, I walked through the house one more time. Each room held memories that now felt corrupted. Our bedroom where she'd plotted against me. The living room where we'd watched movies together. The kitchen where she prepared my poison every morning with a smile. I couldn't stay here. I knew that with certainty. This house, this life, it was all contaminated now. I'd have to start over. Build something new. Become someone different. But first, I had to finish this. I had to see it through to the end. The trial began on a cold Tuesday morning in November, 6 months after everything had fallen apart. I sat in the courtroom wearing a suit I'd bought specifically for this, watching as Jessica was led in by 2 officers. She looked different. Thinner. Older. Her hair was pulled back simply. No makeup. Prison clothes instead of the dresses she used to wear. She looked small and defeated. Our eyes met for just a second. She looked away first. The prosecution built their case methodically over 3 days. They presented the toxicology report, the text messages, my testimony, expert witnesses who explained exactly how the drugs would have affected me, how much longer I might have had before permanent damage or death. I sat in the witness stand for 2 hours and told my story from beginning to end. The morning I came home for my wallet, the conversations I'd overheard, the coffee I'd stopped drinking, the test that proved everything. Jessica's attorney tried to paint me as paranoid, as someone who'd misunderstood innocent actions. But the evidence was overwhelming. There was no explaining away those text messages, those medical reports, that clear, documented timeline. When it was Jessica's turn to testify, her attorney had her tell her version. She cried. She apologized. She claimed she'd been manipulated by David, that she hadn't fully understood what they were doing, that she'd never actually wanted to hurt me. But when the prosecutor cross-examined her, everything fell apart. He showed her the text where she discussed increasing the dose, where she talked about everything being mine after I was gone, where she'd monitored my symptoms with satisfaction. She had no answers that made sense, no explanations that held up under scrutiny. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts: attempted murder, conspiracy, assault with intent. I sat in that courtroom and watched her face as the verdict was read. She didn't cry, didn't react dramatically. She just closed her eyes slowly, like she'd been expecting it all along. The judge scheduled sentencing for 3 weeks later. Nathan and I left the courthouse together, reporters shouting questions that I didn't answer. "It's over," Nathan said when we reached his car. "You did it. You survived." I nodded slowly. He was right. I had survived. But survival wasn't the same as healing. That would take much longer. The sentencing hearing was shorter. The judge gave Jessica 15 years with a possibility of parole after 10. David received 12 years for his role in the conspiracy. 15 years. A decade and a half. She'd be almost 50 when she got out, assuming she made parole. I should have felt victorious, vindicated, safe. Instead, I just felt empty. After the sentencing, I drove to the house one final time. I'd already hired a real estate agent, put it on the market, started the process of selling it and everything in it. I couldn't keep living in the place where someone had tried to kill me. I needed to start completely over. I walked through the empty rooms one last time. Most of the furniture was already gone, donated or sold. Just blank walls and empty spaces now. In the kitchen, I stood where I confronted her that final morning. where I'd placed the toxicology report on the counter, where everything had changed. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Michael, this is David. I know I have no right to contact you, but I need you to know something. Jessica loved you. What we did was unforgivable, but she really did love you once. We just lost our way. Both of us. I'm sorry. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I blocked the number and deleted it. I didn't need his apology. I didn't need his explanations. I didn't need anything from either of them ever again. I locked the front door of that house for the last time and walked away without looking back. Engagement break. How would you rebuild your life after something like this? How do you learn to trust again after the person closest to you tried to kill you? 6 months later, I was living in a different city. New apartment, new job, new life. I'd changed almost everything except my name. Therapy helped. Slowly, gradually, Dr. Patterson met with me twice a week and helped me process everything. The betrayal, the fear, the grief for the life I thought I had. You're not broken, she told me during one session. You're healing. There's a difference. I wanted to believe her. Some days I did. Other days I still woke up and reached for coffee and had to remind myself it was safe to drink. Trust didn't come back easily. Dating seemed impossible. How do you let someone in when the last person you let in tried to murder you? How do you believe in love again after that? But slowly, incrementally, life got better. I made new friends who didn't know my history. Found a coffee shop I liked. Started going to the gym again. Small, normal things that felt revolutionary. One morning, I was reading the news on my phone when I saw a headline that made me stop. Woman sentenced for attempted murder dies in prison. I clicked the link, my heart pounding. But it wasn't Jessica. Different case. Different state. Different story entirely. I closed the app and sat there for a moment, realizing something important. I'd been afraid it was her, and I'd been relieved when it wasn't. Part of me still cared, even after everything. Not romantic love, not forgiveness, just a ghost of what we'd been, haunting me quietly. Dr. Patterson said that was normal, that you don't just stop caring about someone because they hurt you. The heart doesn't work that logically. Tell me in the comments if you've ever had to rebuild your life after someone you trusted betrayed you completely. And if you've dealt with something similar, please share your story below. You're not alone in this. Subscribe for more stories about standing your ground and reclaiming your life. A year after the trial, I finally felt ready to move forward completely. I'd been promoted at my new job, made real friends, started feeling like myself again, or like a new version of myself at least. One Saturday morning, I was at my favorite coffee shop, the one I'd discovered 3 blocks from my apartment, when someone sat down at the table next to mine. "Sorry," she said, noticing me glance over. "Everywhere else is full." "No problem," I said, returning to my book. "What are you reading?" she asked after a moment. I showed her the cover. A thriller about betrayal and revenge. She laughed. Heavy topic for a Saturday morning. "Sometimes heavy topics are easier to process through fiction," I said without thinking. She nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually really insightful." We talked for 20 minutes. Her name was Rachel. She was an architect. She had a warm laugh and kind eyes and didn't ask probing questions about my past. When I left, she was still there. I almost kept walking, almost let the moment pass. But then I turned back. "Would you want to get coffee again sometime?" I asked. Actually get coffee. I mean, not just sit at adjacent tables. She smiled. "I'd like that. I don't know where it will go. Maybe nowhere. Maybe somewhere. Maybe I'll get hurt again. Maybe I won't. But I'm willing to try. And that feels like healing. That feels like hope." 2 years after everything happened, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. Prison postmark. Jessica's handwriting. I stared at it for a long time, unopened on my kitchen counter. Part of me wanted to burn it without reading it. Part of me needed to know what she'd say. Finally, I opened it. The letter was short. 3 paragraphs. No excuses this time. No explanations. Just acknowledgement. I know I destroyed everything. I know I destroyed you. I know sorry will never be enough. But I'm trying to become someone different. Someone better. Someone who would never do what I did. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know I think about what I did every single day. And I will for the rest of my life. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. Not to forget, not to forgive, just to acknowledge that it existed. That night, I had dinner with Rachel at a small Italian restaurant downtown. We'd been dating for 8 months now. She knew my story. I'd told her everything after 3 months, terrified she'd run. She didn't run. You survived something terrible, she'd said simply. That doesn't define you. It's just part of your story. Now, sitting across from her in candlelight, watching her laugh at something the waiter said, I realized something profound. I'd survived. Not just physically, but emotionally. I'd rebuilt my life from nothing. I'd learned to trust again, carefully, slowly. I'd learned that one person's betrayal didn't mean everyone would betray me. I'd learned that healing was possible, that hope was real, that life could be good again. What are you thinking about? Rachel asked, noticing my expression. Just how lucky I am, I said honestly. She reached across the table and took my hand. We both are. And in that moment, I finally believed it. I wasn't supposed to be home that morning 2 years ago when I discovered the truth. But maybe I was exactly where I needed to be. Maybe that moment, as terrible as it was, saved my life in more ways than one. Maybe sometimes you have to lose everything to find out who you really are, to find out what you're actually capable of surviving. I survived. I healed. I found hope again. And if you're going through something similar right now, if someone you trusted has betrayed you, if you're wondering if you'll ever feel normal again, I want you to know something. You will. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. You'll laugh again. You'll trust again. You'll live again. And it will be worth it. All the pain, all the healing, all the work. It will be worth it. I promise.